This video recently went viral. A Ukrainian helicopter shooting down a Russian drone with a minigun. So, what do you think? Impressive, yes, for sure, but it shows the harsh reality of war. The truth is that, for 3 years, Ukraine had to improvise. They put machine guns on helicopters, commercial drones with grenades. Whatever they could find, they turned into a weapon. But while the world was watching the improvisation, something happened. Now, Ukraine is no longer improvising. It has transformed warfare. It's not a weapon. It's an invisible barrier in the sky. And it's controlled by artificial intelligence, which destroys anything that tries to get through it. The best part is, Russia can't respond to this. But before I explain how it works, you need to know what happened. Because when Russia invaded in February 2022, Putin's generals estimated 72 hours to reach Kyiv. Ukraine was fighting with Soviet equipment from the 1980s air defenses that barely worked, and a defense industry that practically didn't exist. 7 companies making drones, just 7, and today there are more than 200, and they're not importing technology. They're developing, testing under real fire, producing millions of units, while bombs fall on the cities. This is something no one predicted. Not NATO, not Putin, not even Ukraine itself. And what they created changed everything. Experts call it the Iron Wall. But it's not a physical wall, or even a giant radar installation. It's something much more sophisticated and much more frightening for those on the other side. Imagine dozens of small drones, each about the size of a basketball, hovering at different altitudes like a minefield, invisible in the sky. When Russian missiles or drones approach Ukrainian airspace, these interceptors don't wait for orders from a command center. The artificial intelligence system detects the threat, then calculates the ideal interception path. And then it launches the exact number of drones needed to ensure the destruction of the target. And here's the brilliant detail. A single operator sitting in a bunker somewhere can control up to 100 of these drones simultaneously. In other words, he doesn't need to pilot each drone individually. It works more or less like a conductor leading an orchestra. The artificial intelligence does the complex calculations, and the human makes the strategic decisions about distribution patterns and priority targets. Have you noticed how birds fly in flocks? Don't they collide with each other? These drones use the same principle as birds. They are collective intelligence algorithms. Each drone shares data locally, moving like a living organism. If a drone is shot down, the swarm reorganizes itself, instantly filling the gap. It's like liquid mercury. You can't make a permanent hole in it. And there's more. The drone doesn't explode. The entire Russian missile would be a waste. It surgically hits the control surfaces, those little wings that guide the missile. At 2,000 kilometers per hour, losing a wing means instant destruction. Small explosion, big result. But here's what really changes the game. Air defenses have always had a fundamental problem: saturation. Think of it this way. You have 10 Patriot missiles. Russia, well, they send 20 cheap drones. You spend $40 million defending, they spend $400,000 attacking. So you lose the economic war. The Iron Wall completely reverses that equation. A single interception costs about $3,000. Now, compare that to the millions for a Patriot missile. And what about the drones that don't detonate? They simply return. They go back to their launch platforms and reload for the next attack. Defense is now 10 times cheaper than attack. Russia? Well, can't beat that math, but... And what about Russian electronic warfare? It was once able to destroy other systems, but in this case, it's completely useless. The system works even when Russia jams global positioning system signals, something they constantly do on the front lines. Each drone has a preloaded three-dimensional map of its operational area and uses visual recognition to navigate. Unless they cover Ukraine with smoke for hundreds of kilometers, they can't blind these drones. During field tests in France, the system achieved something that military engineers thought was impossible. 100% success rate. Every target destroyed. No mistakes, no partial hits, no threats that got away. Now, consider this. Military contractors get excited when testing new systems. With 70% effectiveness, the Iron Wall reached 100%. These drones create what developers call a flying minefield, an aerial curtain that can stretch for miles. Russian pilots approaching Ukrainian cities face not one or two interceptors, but potentially dozens, all coordinating their attacks through artificial intelligence. To create an impenetrable barrier, Ukraine is deploying these systems first around major cities and critical infrastructure, such as power plants and water facilities. In weeks, not months, the Iron Wall will protect Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa. Afterwards, they will expand to cover military bases, ammunition depots, and eventually frontline positions, where Russian glide bombs have devastated Ukrainian trenches. But the Iron Wall is only half the story. While closing the skies, Ukraine has developed a sword, the Flamingo missile. And this is not some improvised drone. It's a cruise missile as sophisticated as the American Tomahawk. With a range of 3,000 kilometers, it is capable of carrying a warhead of 1,100 kilograms, which can level entire city blocks. For 2 years, Russians saw the war as a special operation, far away from their homes. Flamingo put an end to that. With a range of 3,000 kilometers, it can reach Moscow, the Urals, and bomber bases in the Arctic. Russia no longer has any safe sanctuary. Last month, Flamingo missiles hit a Federal Security Service post in Crimea and destroyed 6 Russian hovercraft in a single attack. They made a crater visible from space at Tuapse port. These missiles are destroying Russian oil refineries so effectively that fuel production has dropped by 20%. Gasoline prices at Russian gas stations went up by 10% overnight. Each Flamingo costs $500,000. The 6 hovercrafts you destroyed were worth hundreds of millions and can't be replaced. Refineries, billions in damages and lost revenue. This is economic warfare waged with missiles. And the most impressive thing is that Ukraine builds these missiles completely on its own, without Western restrictions on where they can strike. They don't need permission from Washington or Brussels to hit targets 3,000 kilometers inside Russia. While America debates whether to send Tomahawks, Ukraine is already striking deep into Russian territory with missiles they designed and built themselves. And this combination is devastating the Russian economy. Recently, the shares of Russia's largest oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, plummeted by 20%. Brazil, India, and China have drastically cut their imports. Bloomberg reports that nearly 1 billion barrels of Russian oil are stuck in tankers without buyers. 1 billion barrels float in the ocean because no one wants Russian oil. But they're not just sitting still. They're on old ships, paying thousands of dollars a day in fees, with no maintenance because they're at sea. It's money burning. And without insurance, Western insurers don't cover these ships. Without insurance, no buyer wants the risk of an environmental disaster. Without buyers, the oil just sits there. If they can't sell, they can't pay for maintenance. It's a downward spiral. On Tuesday, Russia's largest international oil field in Iraq officially stopped all operations. Lukoil stated that it was due to force majeure. This is not just a loss of money, it's also a loss of prestige. Russia has always sold itself as a reliable energy partner. But now they've proven that they're a pariah state that can't pay its bills. The truth is that Russia needs oil revenue to buy weapons, pay soldiers, and avoid complete economic collapse. Every barrel they can't sell is another tank they can't build, another missile they can't launch, another soldier who doesn't get paid. The math is brutal. Just to give you an idea, Russia needs oil to be priced at $90 a barrel. That way, they can balance the budget. But it's currently being traded at $65. That's when they're able to trade, of course. Western sanctions are not only limiting who can buy Russian oil, they're forcing Russia to sell at prices that cause a loss on every barrel. And Ukraine's systematic campaign against Russian refineries makes this even worse. 20% of Russia's refining capacity has been destroyed by Ukrainian attacks. The refineries that are still operating are running at reduced capacity because they can't get parts due to the sanctions. Russia, one of the world's largest oil producers, now imports refined fuel because they can't produce enough themselves. And while the Russian oil industry is burning, Ukraine's allies are stepping up military support. Germany just delivered the first batch of 10,000 Kamikaze HX, 2 drones. These aren't ordinary drones, they're artificial intelligence-powered hunters that fly at 220 kilometers per hour. They operate entirely independently of global positioning system. They cost a fraction of traditional weapons, but deliver devastating precision strikes up to 100 kilometers behind enemy lines. A fraction of the cost of weapons. A fraction of the cost of weapons. After 2 years of fighting, Russia has advanced only 40 kilometers. Not 400, not 4,000, 40. They lost entire battalions for every kilometer gained. 40 kilometers in 2 years. Do you know how much that means per day? 50 feet, 15 meters. You can walk that in 20 seconds. And it took them 2 years, losing thousands of men for every kilometer. In modern warfare, concentration means death. 110,000 men in a small sector. That's what the military calls a target-rich environment. Every Ukrainian drone, every cluster munition has endless targets. Putin has created his own slaughterhouse. And while the Russians concentrate everything in Pokrovsk, the 10,000 German HX, 2 drones with 100 kilometers of range, can destroy everything that supplies those 110,000 men. Ammunition trucks, fuel, command posts. All that concentration becomes the perfect trap. A former CIA director said something revealing about all this. He said that Putin is no longer fighting to win because winning is impossible. He is actually fighting to survive politically, while Russia is collapsing economically and militarily. For victory, hooray! Hooray. As a former KGB officer, Putin was trained to accept terrible outcomes as long as the regime survives. During the Cold War, the KGB sacrificed entire networks of agents to protect an important asset. Putin is applying the same logic. He will sacrifice Russia's economy, its army, even its future as a great power, as long as he personally remains in control. The numbers support that. To date, Ukrainian estimates indicate that Russia has suffered more than 1,100,000 casualties, and they've lost more tanks in Ukraine than most countries have in their entire arsenals. Their air force, then, not to mention, can't achieve air superiority. After 3 years of trying, their Black Sea fleet is hiding in distant ports. The reason? Ukraine, a country with almost no navy, keeps sinking their ships. But Putin keeps going because stopping means facing reality. Russia is no longer a superpower. It's a regional power, with nuclear weapons and not much else. Its economy is smaller than Italy's. Its military technology is decades behind the West. Its only reliable allies are North Korea and Iran. And every day, Ukrainian Flamingo missiles destroy a new Russian target. Russia now faces an impossible equation. Its oil industry is collapsing, cutting off war funding when they need it most. Their army is exhausted after 3 years of casualties they can't replace. And now, Ukraine has a defensive system that makes their massive drone and missile attacks completely useless. Putin built his entire strategy on breaking Ukraine's will through bombing. What? To break away? The Iron Wall has the potential to make this strategy obsolete overnight. Every Russian missile that fails to reach its target is wasted resources that Russia cannot afford to lose. Every drone shot down from the sky is money burned, which should have paid soldiers or bought equipment. Ukraine started this war fighting for survival with Soviet equipment from the 1980s. 3 years later, they are deploying artificial intelligence, controlled defensive systems, which make the army look like it belongs in a museum. They're not just winning the innovation war, they're revolutionizing modern warfare, while Russia watches helplessly. And most impressive of all, Ukraine did this alone, by itself, while bombs were falling on its cities. Now tell me, in your opinion, what is the most decisive weapon for Ukraine? The Iron Wall, which closes the skies, or the Flamingo missiles that strike at the heart of Russia? Leave in the comments what you think. If this content was valuable to you, share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel for more analyses like this. See you next time.